Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Tech and Soul podcast. I am Tameka Kee.
And I am Lynn D. Johnson.
And today we are super excited. We have a guest. We have Miss Kacie Luaders. Kacie, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Kacie, welcome. But Tameka, you forgot a few things before we introduce
Oh my
the
God.
guest.
You do it first. Go ahead, do it. Do it.
Okay, so Tech and Soul Podcast, you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Wherever you
We're
listen.
on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube. Wherever you listen, we are there. Please subscribe because that will help us help you.
There's a video game called Borderlands 3, and two of the annoying the evil characters are like these streamers, and one of the things they always say is like, follow and obey. I'm like, every time I see someone say like and subscribe in a YouTube video, I'm like, follow and obey, and I'm not supposed to say that. So anyway, but please like us, subscribe to, I mean, we know you like us already, but subscribe to us, follow, get all those good notifications in your various inboxes. And now, yes, I'm super excited to introduce Kacie Luaders. Kacie is an audio producer and a creative entrepreneur, among other things, and I was really excited to bring her on the show. But Kacie, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. Love talking tech with cool people. So yes, I started off in theater, doing theater sound design, and by way of the pandemic, which sounds bad, and I need to find another way to say that, fell into podcasting, which allowed me to grow a business, a creative business. Could be pretty cool. An audio production company. Everyone in 2020 was stuck in their houses and started podcasts. And so we were able to both produce and do design work for other folks and also develop our original slate of podcasts that, by way of a bunch of bizarre events that will probably never happen again, ended up getting some attention from major media partners. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing for 4-ish years.
I have a question to ask you about that. Like from the inception of could be pretty cool, like to pitching directly to platforms like Spotify, and maybe you can go into what you did with Spotify. What have been some of the most critical factors in successfully selling your podcast concepts, right?
Absolutely. And so that question is probably unknowingly just rooted in so many other societal factors that are happening right now. So to go back to the origin story, back in 2018, 2019, Spotify actually had an accelerator program called Sound Up, which was for women of color. Our amazing, I guess, the founder and creator, Natalie was working at Spotify and just noticed that like the number of podcasts produced by women of color is incredibly low. I think at the time it was like less than 5%. And so she started this initiative to help women of color, if they had audio experience, no audio experience, turn an idea into a podcast. And so I applied for the first cohort in 2018, didn't get in. Applied for the second cohort 2019, made it in, but my concept didn't get picked to go on to further production. And then in 2020, when people were willing to, listen to demos and notes because they were all sitting in the house, just started pitching it out again. And fortunately, that is when we got picked up by Spotify. So series of bizarro events. But the reason I say it sort of ties into larger societal events, unfortunately, that program no longer exists. And as we are seeing, a lot of creator programs that were geared towards folks of color, circa that 2019, 2020 era, are also ceasing to exist. And so I'm really excited about platforms like this, where indie folks like yourself are providing spaces for creators of color to still have a platform, because it's gonna be a very indie, needing to support indie time, I believe, in the next few years.
It's so interesting. That's one of the themes that comes up a lot over our over our podcast. You know, the goal of this show is to talk about tech and media and marketing and creativity and entrepreneurship, but from some distinct lenses, right? From the lenses of Black women, from the lenses of entrepreneurs, from the lenses of the advertising and technology space. And one of the things that I feel like has been a consistent thread has been this idea of the push and pull between being an indie entrepreneur and an indie creator, and like what you can do in-house at a brand or in-house or with a record label or with a movie studio, right? There are these things that, well, they have money, they have capital, right? They have access to resources, which helps you propel your brand, right? And create, and we all need money to eat, right? Like, and so to be creative, but then are there constraints that come along with that, right? Like, so I feel like at one point in time, being part of like a creator funded program was like the dream. I mean, it still kind of is. I'm like, if somebody wanted to come give us a bunch of coins for the show, we would take it. But yes, rain down the abundance. But, you know, I guess this dives into another question. Kacie, having been a creative for such a long time and having had the support of those programs, are there any cons that come with that? And you don't have to give specific tea if you don't want to, but like, is there a balance between sort of going it alone and then sort of having that umbrella of support?
Sure. I think in the same way, you know, in all my little entrepreneurship circles, everyone's having the full-time entrepreneur versus the entrepreneur with a 9 to 5 who's building on the side debate, like which one's more real, which one's better, which one allows you to fully fulfill your potential. And it's like the answer is it depends on the person and the situation, right? Throughout this 4 years that I've been at the helm of Could Be Pretty Cool, 2 of those years I was working full-time off and on because that was helpful for me to be able to, you know, pay contractors and pay for marketing and not have to worry about how I was going to eat groceries and live indoors. And so you know, for folks who are like, yes, I'm an entrepreneur, but I have a 9 to 5, I'm rooting for you. For the folks who are like, no, I dive all the way in and I'm just doing my entrepreneurship 24/7, I'm rooting for you. And it's sort of similar with the being under a corporate entity versus going the indie route. Of course, as you mentioned, having the sustainability of funding and that funding up front, I would say is the biggest pro. But the biggest con, of course, is once one gets accustomed to that type of environment and that environment goes away. And maybe I'm speaking for myself, maybe not, you know.
It's facts. It's
Okay.
facts.
It was a hard 2023 was a hard year, I think, for lots of folks. Tech, of course, media, journalism, entrepreneurship. That's when we started seeing, you know, lawsuits against Fearless Fund and other funds helping, you know, Black and brown folks and women. And so I think 2023 for me was the first year that I was like, oh, we can't just sort of grab onto the corporate saviors who are totally rooting for us and totally going to keep funding us and totally keep supporting us. Because very quickly they can be like, okay, that was cool, bye. And then you got to figure out how to survive. So I would say that was my biggest con, that reality check.
The reality check, and I think that, you know, race definitely plays a major role in that. I remember being part of a startup before and getting accepted to Y Combinator, not the main startup school, but like the one that's online. And like them not believing folks were committed to the business if they had not quit their job and put everything into the startup, right? But it's like a lot of Black people don't have the capital to just quit the job and go full force, head, you know, dive deep into it like that. And I think that, you know, these funds, these creative funds, are more important for us, right? Or any ways that we can get grants or scholarships or what have you. And what I hate right now is this moment of DEI backlash that we're experiencing. right? Where it's like, you know, as affirmative action was struck down, Tameka, on your coast, um, in many ways, you know, it has had repercussions throughout various industries, right? And so, like, what do you guys think about that?
You know, I think it ties into the broader factors that Kacie brought up in the beginning, right? I think 2020 was a pivotal year for so many reasons, not the least of which was a global pandemic that made all of us go in the house. Um, but also racial reckoning, right? And so I think everybody was in their house and in their feelings, and you could not escape it. You could not be like, oh, let's go do this performative other stuff. And I think that I don't think that, I think some of it was performative. I think that a lot of brands, and we've talked about this before, Lynn, will culture jack and jump into the moment. And they're like, oh my God, we need to be woke. I'm like, let's do it because it's going to help us pay bills. I think 100% some of that happened. I do also think that many non-Black people, many white people woke up, and hence the term woke, right? Like I think a lot of people were awakened to kind of the racism in their own families and in their buildings, and so we are having conversations around unconscious bias now, and there is a DEI backlash, but I feel like that's because it became so part of the public consciousness that now you have these sort of old boys, typically old boys, who are like, no, we're going to push back against this progress. So I think that there are still pockets of investment happening for creators of color. I think you'll see it worded a little bit differently. I definitely feel like a lot of that funding has shifted to women, which is a thing, right? I think there's also different and Kacie, I think we talked about this on your like LinkedIn Live. There's also kind of there's different buckets of money. It's like, hey, you know, creatives in this specific particular location. And Kacie, I'm sure you could tell us about the project that you're working on with Atlanta. There's funding for, you know, rural projects. There's funding for projects around specific niche verticals. And I think that might be how creators can get some support. But Kacie, interesting to know what you think.
Absolutely. And I think to that point too, after I stopped moping and having a tantrum in 2023, what I had to come to realize is that perhaps in this particular moment, it's not going to be a time where I just come up with a bunch of ideas and someone goes, oh, that's a great idea. Here's some funding and go make your idea. The strategy around how to get funding, how to make the partnerships and connections just had to radically shift. And so it went from moving from again, just making a pitch deck and, trying to pitch an idea to figuring out, okay, so the subject matter of this thing I want to make is about creative entrepreneurs. What organizations are out there that are providing funding for independent researchers or artists who are looking for economic development strategies? So it's like, maybe that wasn't exactly what I'm trying to do, but how can I finesse what I'm trying to do to match the interests of the people who are funding the thing they're interested in? And that actually became sort of a puzzle that once it started succeeding, became kind of like, oh, okay, we have to figure out it's that get in where you fit in, I think, mentality that's, again, admittedly, from going from, oh, yes, I just have these ideas and people being like, great, go ahead, to, it did take a while to adjust to that. But I think that's going to be the reality for a lot of creators in this particular time. We're definitely in a recalibration, again, for so many industries, journalism, tech, media, podcasts specifically. A lot of people in my industry refer to 2023 as the podpocalypse because so many big corporations laid off thousands, so many even government funded like NPR affiliates were laying off dozens of people. And so yeah, it's just going to be figuring out how to connect the dots as a creator, I believe, with other entities that are readily getting the funding. And I guess that's okay.
It's so interesting when you said the podpocalypse. Because I remember the conversation. You're always doing these interesting things with audio. And I would love to get into your background. And Lynn, I know you have a question too. Sorry. But you did that kind of, it was just like a LinkedIn, I don't know what you called it. It was just like a live, not a live, it was like a live audio session. And I think we were talking and I remembered that you said, like, oh, no, podcasters, there's not just pools of money anymore. And I went to an event recently, and it was actually the ARF Audience Time Science event. And one of the sessions I got to kind of intro was around audio. And it was, I think it was Odyssey, essentially promoting some of the research that they did around audio moments in a person's day. And because obviously they're trying to sell ads in their platform. And they were essentially like, yeah, you can target based on the context of the show. You can target based on sort of who you think the audience is going to be. But we came up with some research that showed that different points of the day correspond to different musical moments. And if you, and so they benchmarked contextually targeted, so based on the content of the event, of the show, audience targeted based on sort of age and demographic information, and then day part, or I think they called it like sound part targeting. And the campaigns that were sound part targeted, like achieved X number of results, and it was awesome. But they kept talking about how this is the greatest time for audio and podcasts. Oh no, actually, I think that was SXM. Let me not slander Odyssey. It was serious. It was SXM Pandora. And they were like, this is the best time ever for audio. Investments are, growing year over year. And I posed a question. I was like, so, are these investments actually flowing to the podcast creators themselves, or are they? And then I got met with, some weird blank stare and some eyeballs. And they were like, no, IAB says investments in audio have gone up. So anyway, there's a long roundabout story of wondering, from a financial standpoint, do you think, has the money dried up from a cool, just creative idea perspective? And is there money being invested in audio in specific areas? And that was a long question. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. No, I mean, again, I think that so going back to like the podcast, right? Like the first podcast I think came out in like 2003, something like that. And the whole medium was just
it might
like,
have been a little earlier than
it might have
that,
been a little early. Yeah, it was like around
early
there.
aughts for sure.
Early aughts, yes. And it's like the whole medium was just randos recording things that they thought were interesting, right? Like I think the whole idea of mega monetization for the podcast is, I mean, it's, relatively new, 5, 6, 7 years. And I think that especially with, kind of what we talked about with the big bubble circa 2020-ish, where everybody was making podcasts, listening to podcasts. These big companies were investing these, multiple $1 million deals in celebrity podcasts. And, because this is going to be the next big thing. Once folks kind of saw like, oh, that's not how we're going to become mega rich and monetize these things. There is kind of like we're sort of refinding ourselves, I think, as an industry. And while I don't believe that the pools of money have just like sort of dried up, again, I'll just say that, for the folks out there who are like, oh my God, I have this idea, I really want to make it, I'm really serious about it, I'm going to pitch it to my local NPR station, or I'm going to pitch it to one of the major folks. If you don't hear back from them, like, don't stop. That just may not be the common route that creators are going to achieve success with. But again, it's going to be finding those points of common connection between what you're doing and who's funding either maybe something exactly what you're doing, but more than likely something close to what you're doing. Something that has been another thing that my company has been doing a lot this year folks have reached out to us who are maybe contracting with either a government partner or a corporate partner, and within what they're trying to do, maybe part of like a marketing plan is, oh, we want to do just like a 3-episode like deep dive into this product. So they'll subcontract us to do a thing for the thing they're being contracted to do. And it's like, okay, we can do that. And so that's not, ever something that I planned to do or that I was seeking, to do, but it's a point of connection to continue allowing the business to exist. So we figure it out.
Right. I remember back in so you were talking about the early aughts when the first podcast started. I remember around 2006, 2007, there was this platform called Blog Talk Radio.
Oh
And
my
it was
God, yeah.
you remember that? And I was on a couple of shows that some hosts had, and you could call in and it could be like live and direct, and it was awesome. But I remember thinking back then, oh, the year of the podcast is coming, right? The year of the podcast is coming. But then podcasts kind of died out totally until I would say pandemic times, right? Where I feel like podcasts had died out a bit there. There was the celebrity podcast was big, but I think otherwise podcasts had kind of died out. And that once Spotify started buying up all these independent podcast companies, right? And then Amazon started diving in, it seemed like podcasts became main and center of a lot of things. But still, I work with publishers who have news companies, media organizations, and still a lot of them are not taking advantage of this medium, right? But the Spotify's, the Pandora, the Spotify's, the Siriuses, the Odysseys, the Amazons of the world will tell you that podcasts are the greatest thing, that everyone's tuning in. And I don't know, what have you found as you're working on projects and stuff? What have you found?
In truth, I was definitely one of those bandwagon people circa 2019, 2020 who was like, yes, podcast. But I will say my entire interest from middle school through grad school has been audio. I graduated from high school wanting to be a superstar music producer. I was obsessed with Pharrell, obsessed with Timberland. Went to Hampton University, majored in music recording technology, quickly learned I was not very good at producing music. Very quickly learned that. But I fell into the theater and started doing design for plays at Hampton and started being more on the engineering side in my music major. So audio tech, figuring out how to support stories with audio is what I've always wanted to do. But I didn't know that podcasts were a medium through which I could do that, right? I thought, to your point, podcast was celebrities talking to their other celebrity friends or, the news or sports. I didn't know the vessel of a podcast could be something that you could tell freaky, weird stories with, or non-traditional or non-narrative. And so it wasn't until as a creator I kind of was like, oh, you can do that. That's not against the rules, that I started getting involved with the podcasting scene. And so I guess you could say I'm probably not a huge podcast consumer, right? Like I never really listened to them. I in truth still kind of don't. Um, it's the vessel through which I can now channel another aspect of my creativity. And when it comes to now, in the direction my company's going to, um, it's a vessel that I'm helping other people communicate ideas and to have their ideas to a wider audience. For example, I work with research organizations or universities to where, they could be writing a 20-page journal and presenting it at the big science conference, and then that's it. But now we can figure out, okay, how can we take the key points of this paper and like make a, a one-off series of the podcast, and it could live on forever and people could tune in from all over the world. But that may not necessarily be something that they're going to sell ads on and make money on. But it could be something that their next grant application, they can say, I made this thing and, it got these listens and this feedback. So going back to your question and my roundabout answer, Lynn,
It's fine.
yeah, I in this moment do not see podcasts as like the primary way a creator can monetize through like just I'm going to make this thing and sell ads on it. But I do see it again as that making those points of common connection. Okay, this thing now illustrates my abilities to communicate about X. So I'm going to put this on my application for this grant funding to show them that I can communicate about this. And then with this grant funding, I'll move to this next place. Yeah, I see it as a tool to grow monetarily, but not necessarily the end all be all for most people. Some people, yes.
So for you, like it was a tool to start a production company in a
Correct.
way, right? For some other people, it might be a tool to start an events business or another kind of media business, right? I can definitely see that. And I'm going to switch gears here a little bit because I want to make sure we talk about this. The way you two met, some kind of pitch fest. I want to hear about this AI poetry slam, whatever it was. I want to hear all about this. Can you guys tell me about this?
I met Kacie. Kacie was one of the participants in the Black Public Media BPM Plus Immersive Pitch Fest. I was the host, as I do, and Kacie was one of the people who submitted BPM Plus. The BPM Plus Immersive Pitch Fest is a competition that rewards immersive artists, so that can be VR, AR, audio, anything that's not film. Not a traditional film, with either 50K or 25K award for their project. And so there were six people participating, and Kacie was one of the participants. There was this amazing video game that was around like retelling the story of the Haitian Revolution. There was a woman who had she made an ice skating projection mapping experience. There were all these super interesting things. And then there was this woman who made like an AI battle chatbot game. So Kacie, please tell us about the game. Was it called Word Games?
It was called Word Games.
Yes, please tell us about it.
Sure. So this is a direct example of how podcast or an idea for a podcast led to being connected with an organization that wasn't explicitly saying, hey, we would like for people who want to make some robot audio stories to apply for this. It was, we're looking for creative technologists, which is not a term I had ever used or referred to myself. I was like, am I one? I don't know. And through the process, I pitched the idea. I'm always someone who's like, okay, this is so dumb. Everybody's gonna think this is so dumb, but we'll see what happens. But fortunately, the team, Lisa Osborne, Asia, were like, oh, okay. And I was able to, just be in community with amazing Black and Brown creators from all over the country, all over the world. And at the actual event, even though, yes, you want to get that money, pitching for funding, it really was more like, I can't believe I'm in this room with these folks who are doing this AR, VR, motion capture, augmented. It's like I'm a sound guy. I make little podcasts. This is crazy. And so I think that was just another stepping stone for me in my career to be able to find tools that I don't normally use, to go into spaces where I don't, normally go, and to be like, oh, I can figure out a point of common connection for being here. And it really, I think, has just solidified myself and my company's ability to figure a way to get into the room.
So can you talk to us a little bit? One of our first episodes of our podcast was called AI versus Everybody. And that was actually what inspired me to invite you to join us, because I was like, wow, here's this person who is a creator of audio, right? Like you're and a creative. And, we've always talked about, not we, but there's this collective idea of the machines coming to take everybody's jobs. And you were like, no, machine, I'm going to use you and incorporate you. So can you talk to us a little bit about what it was like? Can you tell us about what word games kind of involved, and maybe even a little bit from the production perspective?
Sure thing. So this project was really initiated maybe December of 2022. This is like when the first whisperings of there's this thing called Chat GPT that is, in beta testing, and maybe it'll be open to the public soon. And you can type in things and the AI will, respond to you. And I just remember being like, oh my God, that would be so cool to be able to like, what would they respond to if I asked them to like make a song or make a poem? Like that's before I even used Chat GPT. And so I believe the first time I actually used it was like beginning of 2003. And it was so basic. It was just like, the poem.
2023.
2023, yes, 2020. Sorry,
Like,
the years are
wow.
all blurred together. No, oh yeah, I was on that shit like before everybody. No,
So that
2023.
was,
No, I
right.
don't know. So I just remember thinking like, I want to make a spoken word poetry album because the Grammys the year prior had just added the best spoken word poetry category. And I was like, I wonder if I could do it where like the robots make a poem and then like humans battle the robot with like the same theme. And that's essentially where the whole thing started. So again, if I was just talking about it to like my friends, this is like right when ChatGPT was coming out. So they're like, what are you talking about? But I pitched the idea for a grant fund for City of Atlanta. And, at that time, AI, robots, production, they were like, okay, so we got a little cash from there. Um, and the production process was, I mean, pretty simple. I got 4 dope human poets. I got 4 dope human composers, and gave them and their robot counterparts the same word, prompted, in the Chat GPT, write a poem about, whatever the word is. And we also used AI composition tools. So, text to music, write a song about this.
Okay.
And then the human poets' poems were given to the human composers who then scored the poems. And so we have this like a little narrative story back and forth, post-apocalyptic world. Robots and humans are they've decided that after the Great Robot War, they're going to do this poetry slam to commemorate they can work together. And so at the time, I'm like, oh my God, like this is going to be revolutionary. Listening back to it, not even a year later, compared to what the AI can do now,
Wow.
so basic. It's hilarious. It's like looking at like a Nintendo 64 video game now, right? When I was like 9 or 10, I was like, this is the most extreme graphics. Oh, it's coming right at me. And now it's like, wow, it's so basic. That's how I feel about this album, not even a year later.
Wow.
But in a good way.
Yeah, I mean the tech has advanced like rapidly, and I know that now there are a lot of people content creators creating content on YouTube solely with AI. AI is doing the images, they're just feeding ideas, putting the whole story together. The AI is putting the story together, narrating the video, all of this now. What do you think might be some other technologies or other ways in that like audio storytelling might uh, evolve? Yeah, some other technologies that might come into play.
So, and I hope that my fellow artists and designers, sound designers, are mad at me. Something that I would love for things like cinematic sound design is if you could load up, your film, your raw footage, and if there's an AI that could pull in, like just cut in basic sound effects. So the AI will say like, oh, this is a scene from that's outside. It's a sunny day. It'll pull in like the background sounds of like the birds and just like the outdoor sounds. Um, little things that like you wouldn't have to find and do manually. If it sees like a dog running by, it could be like, oh, okay, we'll put like a dog bark or something. So that the designer could just focus on, you know, the custom sound design, the lasers and the, you know, the things you actually have to design instead of, you know, having to cut in everything else. Um, I would love, as someone who still does theatrical sound design, tools to sorry everyone. I would love AI like mixing tools. So like if you're doing a musical and folks are, you know, wearing microphones, maybe the AI you program in the script, like on this song, these are the 5 actors on stage. And so the AI knows, all right, we cut everybody else's mic off and it's kind of mixing the show for you. And you're just kind of there to monitor it. Like, you know, people's jobs are going to be lost, but also people who sort of are in charge of managing these things can do 3, 4 shows at a time because there's a possibility they wouldn't even physically need to be there. They just need to program it. So I don't know. Yeah, now I feel bad. Like,
Now you feel
yeah,
bad because it sounds like people's jobs are going to be eliminated, but it also calls for new skills, right?
for
And
sure.
within the industry, right? People will have to, and it sounds like it's beyond prompt engineering. Like, what do you think those skills are? Do you have any concept?
I think being able to like the things I'm talking about, I'm sure if they're not possible already, I just need to find an engineer. I need to find an audio, you know, designer, an acoustician, a developer that I could like say these things to and like have them build it. I think the skill set for creators is going to be knowing how to communicate these things in our head to the tech folks who can actually build it and sort of vice versa. Tech folks being like, what are these wacky artists talking about? How can we, you know, implement this thing that they want? I've started embracing this creative technologist thing more. And I'm not going to be someone who's going to go out and like learn how to code or anything, but I want to learn how to talk to a coder and say, you know, I want this app when people come to the show, they can push a button and the lights change on the stage. So however the audience is feeling, they can change the design of the lighting plot. And I want to be able to like articulate that, have a plan for what it's for, articulate to my creative counterparts, like this is why, you know, this is important for the story, articulate to the designer, developer, this is how I want it to work. Like I think the skill set for creative technologists, am I one? I don't know, is going to be just learning that
Own it, own it.
communication. Okay, okay. Yes, I
Yeah.
am. I am one. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you could put, you brought up different things that I didn't even think of. You're like, oh, a sound mixer versus, I'm like, doesn't everybody just do the same thing? No. So like there's like a sound mixer, there's a producer, there's an editor, and all of their jobs are going to be taken by AI now. But no, just kidding. But I think so. I think you are. I also think there's a reframing of how we think about I would, if I thought of someone as an audio producer or an audio engineer, I would definitely think of a creative technologist because you use Pro Tools or any of those other things that's technology and you're being creative with it, right? Which that's a segue into one of the questions I have. You know, as the economy has shifted, you know, as things have, as the nature of work has shifted, you know, you have an MFA, you have it, which is a whole other thing, right? What do you think about people who, you know, the younger generation? Would you encourage them to go to college and or, you know, grad school, you know, for audio or for, you know, creative disciplines? Or do you think people can learn from YouTube and save, you know, $100,000?
I was going to say, I most certainly would not encourage anyone to go into debt for any type of education, particularly graduate studies. If you cannot get a graduate degree, particularly in an artistic field for free or close to free, I would not advise you do it. That can be a separate podcast for another day. But I think it depends a lot on the intention of the person, which is hard for a lot of folks who are 22, 23, trying to figure out their lives. Um, there are some folks who is like, I just want to work. I just want to, get on a crew and work my way up and be a head engineer at whatever performance venue or, get in the union and just gig up and make my money and that's it. Do they need to go to a 4-year college and get a master's? Probably not. They just need to intern, apprentice, maybe take some basic, community college, audio 101, signal flow, maybe a physics class, and they'll probably be good. I didn't know at the time that I would become interested in using what I do for academia and for research, and that space would embrace. I mean, right now they're the main folks who are embracing. I was actually just like right before this podcast started, accepted into a program through Georgia Public Broadcasting. It's a paid training program. I'll be learning how to teach students about podcasting. And
Congratulations.
so, thank you, appreciate that. And so I don't think without my formal education, I would feel as comfortable teaching other folks. And I would feel as equipped to, like, say, if somebody doesn't understand something, to be like, okay, well, let's look at it like this. We can take this thing and, so it's kind of a happy accident. Is it a happy accident you got to go into a whole bunch of debt for? I still say no. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it really depends on if you want to go the more practitioner route or the educator researcher route.
Well, I never even thought of the connection between like grad school and being able to teach others, right? Like that's a connection that I never even thought of, right? Like you got your undergrad and then so much of what you do in grad school, I would imagine, as someone who did not go, what is sort of learning how to sort of teach and mentor others, which I think is a big thing. I have a couple of other questions. Obviously, I will always have a bunch of questions. Lynn, I wanted to see, did you?
So will I. I will always have many questions. I mean, for me, I think it's, and researching you before the podcast, because I didn't have the wonderful opportunity to meet you in person like Tameka did. I found out that community was a big part of the work that you do. Can you delve into that a little bit and explore that with us? Like, and why is community just important in general, or do you find it's even more important for us folks?
Absolutely. I can say, like, with zero hesitation, nothing that I have done, from the Spotify, application, to any of the creator programs I've done, any of the grants I've submitted, it's been someone just like shooting me a quick email or message like, hey, did you see this? Like, hey, I saw this and thought, like, this might be something you want to do. I just thought I'd pass it along. And so initially, before It Could Be Pretty Cool was a thing, that was like my mentality. Like, I don't know what this might be, but it could be pretty cool. So either if it's not for me, I'm gonna, show it to somebody else. If, I'll just tell other people about it, even if I'm going to apply for the same thing, if I think it might benefit somebody. Like, it's always in my circle of peers, that's just been the vibe. No one has tried to like gatekeep information. No one has tried to, hoard all the resources. I'm really fortunate to have come up here in Atlanta in a creative community where we're always like, everyone has their ears to the streets. Everyone is always trying to help everyone else. And so, I mean, I don't know if it's like, I don't know, like a millennial thing, and we're all just, like, oh, whatever, why should we fight? We should have a peace. But that's just kind of how it feels like. I want everyone to win, like, genuinely. I think the vibe just feels better when everyone is doing something cool. We're always sharing each other's wins on social. Like, yo, look, she's in this magazine, or he just finished, his PhD. Like, wanting everyone to do well, I think is just, I don't know, just an unintentional thing that's come along with being a part of a creative community. And so that's why it's important. I think it's enough out here for everybody. And we just need to keep, what is it, the rising
I
tide
live
raise.
on boats.
Yeah, I really believe that. Like, why not?
So two creative questions then. That's a perfect segue because talking about stuff on social media and what we've seen, I feel like did you just I feel like this is a meeting of three house heads actually because I feel like Kacie, I feel like I saw you. Am I hallucinating this? Were you in like a magazine spread about like the origins of house music? You were.
Yeah, I was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I literally, someone on LinkedIn was like, "Hey, I'm doing an article on house music from the Midwest and in particular." And I grew up in Detroit.
Oh man.
Yeah, Detroit techno. There was an exhibit when I was in high school at the Detroit History Museum on the history of techno music and, in the 80s, the sort of pioneers coming from Detroit. And I just remember being like, no one taught us this. This isn't something anyone, like, I would have never known this. And that's when I sort of started exploring electronic music. Movement, which is a huge techno festival. I went to the first one back in, was it 2003? I don't know. It was back early aughts, and the Free Festival. And so I've been obsessed with electronic music since, middle school, high school, and was just like, oh yeah, I can talk about that. So that happened.
That is amazing because Lynn is a house head as
Oh,
a
hey.
I love the and I've learned recently that the Detroit sound is very different from the
oh yeah.
Chicago sound.
Oh yeah.
Like see, yeah, and so like I grew up in the 80s. So
Mm,
coming out of Chicago was a lot of the like what do they call it? Acid house,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And it was, like Jack Your Body and all those old school songs like that. But growing up in New York, there was always like New York was hip hop, but
mhm,
New York was also house.
House.
It was also very much house, and like we had the clubs like the Garage and
Deep
Body
house.
and Soul, and yeah, all these deep house places in the yeah. I think music though is a major part of creativity, right? Do you guys agree? Like,
Oh yeah.
mhm,
That Odyssey piece around kind of the music of the day parts was super interesting because it's like music can motivate you in so many ways. Like if I don't have the right BPMs for working out, it's not my jam, right? Like, and I could do it, but like the music of a yoga class, for example, like depending on who the teacher is, like they will guide you through your yoga experience. You get there, you mellow out at first, then you're in peak pose and you got your leg up next to your ear and you're like, I don't know if I could do this, but the music keeps you going and then it takes you down. I mean, I I feel like every episode I talk about some other idea that I wanted to do. This was probably 10 years ago. I basically wanted to make a platform called Soul Side that was for the soulful side of electronic music. And it was basically going to be like, okay, like, yes, there's techno, there's house, but there's like deep house and that's soulful. And then there's, Afro house and there's that. And then there's drum and bass and kind of like the soulful side of drum and bass. For me, it's been interesting lately. I've just gotten back into deep house again, but I've really been into D&B and I want to take a trip to Bristol for some reason and just like go to like a real drum and bass and just have it. I don't know if I'm ready to do like a D&B music festival because I feel like that might it's gonna be too much, but like I'm in a D&B slash chill hop phase of my life right now with like strands of deep house again. I don't know what about you two?
so talking about my old age again, back in the 80s, going to like Brixton and stuff like that. I was that D&B, yes, definitely. And dope times. Soul to Soul, you remember them, right? Yeah, but also I think I'm feeling like there's a fusion of like jazz in the house, right?
Mhm.
Not lofi or lo-fi, whatever people want to call it. You know,
Lo-fi.
it's tomato. I hear people say lofi, which annoys the hell
That
out
makes no
of me.
fucking sense. Sorry.
They be like the lofi girl. I'm looking for the lofi. I hate it when people say that. But anyway, there's like this jazz in the house kind of fusion that I'm really interested in right now. And also just like house that's coming out of the UK is like it's just oh, but I do also like house coming out of Greece. I don't know if you guys have ever heard any house
Oh,
coming out of Greece. Yeah, Greece and Ibiza.
okay. What are you listening to from an electronic music standpoint?
Sure. I sort of, I guess I was born in the late 80s, came up in the 90s, and I didn't really start discovering electronic music. I discovered it in that kind of embarrassing, like it started getting popular and they started calling it electronica phase.
EDM. Oh,
Yeah,
electronica.
electronic. I
Okay.
know. Oh, no, right. Like
I
circa
hated that.
95,
Yeah.
I
96.
hated that.
And so for like an 8, 9-year-old growing up in Detroit, like seeing like what was it like the Prodigy and
Yes.
seeing like a weirdo black dude and a weirdo white dude just like hanging. I was like, what is this? So a lot of Prodigy, a lot of Ronnie Size on the drum and bass front, um, a lot of Tricky, a lot of Massive Attack. Like I just as a young person, I was just drawn to like weird black people. That was my favorite thing. And no one, in my Detroit public school or in my family discussed electronic music as black music.
Mhm.
It was always we invented jazz and gospel and, soul. And so just seeing this like world, like, does anyone else see this? Like, look at this. It just always felt like a fun secret that I knew. And I'm happy like clearly other people knew about it. But I'll say even now, I'm still probably listening to the same stuff that I listened to when I was 9. So a lot of the same folks. And then like Kate Renata, which
Atra is
Oh
Atra.
yeah.
I
Atra
mean,
is lethal. That's a whole other podcast episode. Oh my God, sort of black electronic music and like weird black people. I feel like that's actually a perfect end to this episode. We're three amazing weird black women. Actually, no, wait, one more question, Kacie.
oh, okay.
What is the black woman eating the sub on LinkedIn thing? Because I've seen your post, unless you know what I'm talking about. I've seen you post it
No,
a
it's
couple of times. It's like there's like have a black woman joyfully eating a sub weekend, or like so. What is that?
I literally one day was eating a sub, eating an Italian sub sandwich, and was just like, ma'am, like I feel all right. Like everything, like just in this moment, I feel good. Like I'm eating a sandwich. I'm not thinking about my problems. Like I wish this could just be the vibe. If this was just the vibe universally, there would be no wars, there'd be world peace. And so, as the creator in me, the creative technologist, playing with these AI tools, I went to I'll Bing image generator and typed in Black woman with locks joyfully eating a giant party sub in space, kind of like a self-portrait in a way. And the image that was generated was like, yes, that's this. I feel like I'm on top of the world, just eating a sandwich. Like, yes, this is the vibe. And so ever since then, every Friday on LinkedIn, just whatever vibe I'm feeling is what I'm prompting the AI. But we started with Black woman with locks joyfully eating a giant party sub. So sometimes it's something as mundane as, at her annual physical. I got my physical that week. My cholesterol finally went down. Or, joyfully eating a giant party sub. Um, I don't know, in a haute couture gown. I that's when I was probably the week I was going to get married. Definitely wasn't wearing a haute couture gown. I rented that thing and sent it back. But yeah, it's a complete hobby project. I'm not trying to do anything from it. But people started commenting on it. Not even, just black people. It was just kind of everybody like this makes me happy, or I look forward to this every Friday. And so I'm like, oh, all right, this takes no time to do. And if it brings just a smidgen of joy to someone, then why not?
Kacie, last but not least, how can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Kacie. Well, if you type in Kacie Willis, I'll pop up. That's probably easiest. But find anything about Could Be Pretty Cool at Could Be Pretty Cool, couldbeprettycool.com. And yeah, we're around the internet.
And the Could Be Pretty Cool Substack.
Oh, and that also as well.
Okay. So you're out here, basically.
We're trying. We're
You're
trying.
out here. So yeah, also based on the music stuff we were talking about earlier, I want to send you guys an article I wrote way back in the days called Techno Soul. They sing the black body electric.
Come on.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, it just came to my mind as we were talking about the music stuff. But beyond that, Kacie, it was great meeting you. Thank you for coming to the podcast. And folks listening, you know what to do. Subscribe,
like, follow,
follow,
subscribe,
leave
do it all.
comments. Do it all.
Obey.
Do it all.
Obey.